I'm half wolf, half other otter. I'm aqua-colored with green highlights. There is a hook marking underneath my left eye. I live in central Wisconsin myself, in a cabin that I built on a lake. I left society so that I could be myself and not be judged by any appearance like what I would do. I was bullied in school since my parents were different species. No one even cared about me except for my dad. When I was 13, he was framed, so I was hoping selling drugs that I would end up in another wolf's death. I will more than likely never see my father again due to this neglect and verbal abuse from my now dead mother, who committed suicide when I was 9 years old. I have PTSD and I try to let it out, but sometimes it is what I let out. I like being alone. I have been hurt by too many friends and family who truly trust anyone. I survived by using my survival skills my dad had taught me and selling fish scale necklaces I made from fish and I catch from the lake. I don't have any friends or family that care about me besides my dad. My favorite things to do are fish and swim. There are some things that me and my dad did together, and doing those things make me feel happy, and it's a type of therapy for me. The only person I talk to is the cashier at my local sporting goods store, and her name is Chasey. She is a mountain lion, but she was also bullied the same way she looked. Her head even jet black, with her body was white and her arms and legs were all gray. She had different color eyes. One green eye and one blue eye. She also has that scar where she got from being in a fight with another girl. She is only the real interaction I had with her with anyone else, other besides my customers. I feel that she understands me, even when she sees me. She always asks how I'm doing due to being honest, and I like talking to her. I just found out that my dad died in prison. I needed to let this soak in. I think I'm actually starting to form a friendship with Chasey, but I don't know what to do. It's really bad. I don't have any food left, and it's the winter time, and I'm running very low on water, and I have to leave to get more due to the snow. This is really bad. I'm cold. So cold I'm having trouble staying awake in this end. I will see you soon, Dad. As he drifts off to sleep, he is expecting that he will not wake up from this. At least I'll be with Dad again. So weak. Can't move. Where am I? In a blanket? What? A fireplace? Where am I? I was too weak to move, so I just laid there drifting in a hand out of consciousness. At one point, I heard a voice, not audible, but I did hear a voice when I felt a paw on my head, and I flinched up. Don't touch me. And the paw pulled away quickly, but I gently touched my head again. No, please stop. I wanted to get out of the way from whoever was, but it did not have the energy. So I just laid there and felt now another paw go under my head and try to lift it onto something soft. I did not know what it was happening. Then I felt another paw touch my head. I tried to get it out of the way, but I had no energy left. Then the paw slowly began stroking my head. I did not know that what my head was on, but it was soft and it felt good to be held. I quickly relaxed and fell back to sleep. This happened for a few more times, and I didn't know who it was holding me, but I know what whoever did, someone really cared about me. That happened to me. Hello? Oh my God, you're awake, said a feminine voice. Who are you? I asked. It's me, Chasey. Do you remember? She asked. Yes, I do remember you. Where am I? You're at my house, she replied. I turned my head. I saw over my other head was on her lap. What was this soft thing? What happened? I went here to bring you food to see if you wanted to come to my house for the winter because it had gotten so cold. But when I opened your door, I saw you on the floor motionless. I panicked and checked to see if you had a pulse, and you did, so I hurried and carried you into my car and brought you to my home. I wrapped you in my arms and in a blanket and put you next to the fire. I fed you soup and tried to wake you up, but you never did, until now. How long have I been asleep? Around 2 weeks, she replied. I was too weak to hear the news. When I passed out again, and I woke up again and she was asleep next to me on the floor. I know what to do, but she does care about me otherwise. I would be dead right by now. I fought, so I moved a little bit, and I could tell that she was closest to her as possible and fell back to sleep. When I woke up, I found out that I was alone, and I said hello, but no answer. I had enough strength to get up, so I looked out of the window, and it was still snowing, and I didn't know what to do. I noticed the fire had died down, so I put a small log in the fire, and I've got to say it was the hardest thing I did in my life. But it was very cold still, so I laid on the couch with a blanket so that it was on me and waited for the fire to catch on the log. As I was waiting for the hard floor to open, a whoosh of air came into the house. It was Chansey, and she had bags of food. I knew I was too weak to help get off the couch, and I went to ask if she needed help. When I made it to the kitchen, where she had already started unpacking, I asked if she needed help. She jumped at the sound of my voice and spun around quickly and hugged me. I don't know why, but I hugged her back. She seemed so surprised by this because she seemed to stop breathing when I put my arms around her. When she let go of me, she said that she didn't think I would be up by the time she got back. To be honest, I didn't either, but yet again, I asked if she needed help, and she said in a stern voice no, and walked me over to the couch and told me just to stay there until she came back. So I did, and the fire had caught and started to heat me up. When she returned, she had a bowl of soup and told me to eat it, so I tried to hold the bowl, but I wasn't strong enough to hold it, and I would have dropped it if Chansey hadn't let go, but she was holding it and caught it before it dropped. I told her that I was sorry, but I'm just too weak and already need to hold everything over a pound. She looked at me and shut up and said, "What?" I replied with, "You heard me. Open up. You need to eat, and I don't care if I have to feed it to you myself." "I'm sorry. I can't let you do that," I replied. She looked at me with, "You're doing it whatever you like it or not. Look, and you wanted to," so I opened my mouth and she fed me the bowl of soup. It was so demeaning, but it felt very good. So after we sat in front of onto the fire and started talking. I asked her why she took me in and took care of me. She said that if she would never forgive herself, so then she would ask a personal question, and I said okay. And she asked why I had frozen tears on my fur when she found me. I replied with that I was expecting to see my dad. Her expression changed as she covered her mouth with her paw and looks like she's about to cry. I just sat there not knowing what to do, and finally she hugged me again, but a lot tighter than before. I looked back at her, and we both sat for a while. She was weeping softly, and I asked why she was crying. She replied, "I don't want you to ever say that again." I knew what she meant by that, but didn't expect her to ever hear that from anyone. So I told her I promised her that I would never say it again, and she wiped away the tears and whispered in a shaky voice, "Thank you." We sat in that hug for a while, but didn't talk while we just sat there with each other. I then asked her why she came to my cabin in the first place, and she said because she had not seen me at the sporting goods store in a while and wanted to make sure I was okay and if I needed to spend the rest of my winter with her. If I didn't want to, she would at least give me some food to try to help. I would tell her that was the only time someone would ever, other than my dad, would care about me. She said that she wanted to see me anyway. Apparently, she was also talking to me. I thanked her so much by that time, and I was in the dark, and we were getting tired, and I asked if I could stay with her for the rest of the winter, and she told me of course. I could do that for the whole season, and she came to see me in the first place. By then it was late, so I asked her where that the sleeping arrangements would be for the time being. She said that I would sleep wherever I want. So I asked if I could sleep on the couch, and she said, of course. So I lay down on the couch, and we told each other good night. About 4 hours later, I woke up to screaming. This was her woke up too, and we rushed into her room, crying with a bunch up of in a ball. She asked if I was okay, and I shook my head yes, but she sat back next to me and asked me what was wrong. I couldn't talk, and she just laid down and told me if I needed to talk, then she would be right here. About 20 minutes later, I sat up quietly and asked if she was awake, and she sat up almost immediately and asked if I wanted to talk, and I said yeah. Then she asked me about the whole thing about I told her that I had a bad terrors and that it happens almost every night. She asked me about what they were, and I burst into tears, and she hugged me and told me that it was going to be okay and that she was there. She wanted to stroke my fur and telling me that everything was going to be okay. The next thing I know is I woke up still in her arms and her still asleep. I don't want to be waking up by her moving, so she would have just gotten up in the night with me to think to myself, I can't believe she cares about me enough to let me sit up, to make sure that she knew I was there. When she woke up and noticed I haven't moved from her, I don't know what she thought of it because she shook me gently to wake me up. I apologized and she said it was no problem, and she asked if I was feeling better, which I replied with better. Then she asked if I was hungry. I hate to admit it, but I was starving, and then she said, I thought I could get some solid food, and I replied, yes, I think so. She got up, went to the kitchen, and came out with 2 elk steaks, and I asked if elk would be okay, and I honestly haven't had elk in years. And trying to contain my enthusiasm, she said that would be wonderful. We cooked the steaks on the fire, and they were really good, as if we were eating. She asked, what do I do in my free time? And I told her that I fish and swim in my free time. She asked me why I do those things, and I told her it was because it makes me feel happy, and it makes me feel close to my dad. She then asks why I don't talk about my mom. I told her it was because she was never good, and she was always neglecting me, and when she would not notice me, it was just so... I started crying. She stopped eating and asked what was wrong. I just have PTSD to her screaming and yelling at me when I was a child. Whenever I hear someone yelling, I have a panic attack. And then I started to cry. She said she was sorry for bringing it up when she gave me a quick hug, and I said thanks, and then we went back to eating. When we finished, she asked what I wanted to do, and I told her that she used a host and she chooses. She asked if it'd be okay if she asked me more questions, and I hesitantly said okay. She asked if I was like that all this time. What do I mean? I asked anxiously and afraid all this time. And she said, yeah, hard like living like this, and I can trust like I used to. And I don't get much sleep anymore. I have been backstabbed too many times by people I trust, and too many bad things. Some have happened in my youth, and it's just hard living at that point. She then looked at me almost horrified with what I just said, and I didn't know what to do, so I turned away. She asked if I was okay, and to be honest, the whole no, I'm not sure, but since I have been with you, all those things get better. I glanced up at her, and she was just staring at me. You know, that's why. I know you know what I'm getting at. Why you haven't told me any of this before? Because I didn't know if I could trust you. With knowing them, I then quickly replied, but now you know you've just saved my life, I think I can trust you. She just simply looked at me and then jumped on me and gave me the tightest hug I ever had gotten since we laid there motionless. She asked if I have known this earlier. I would have asked her to live with me a long time ago. Thank you, I said, and we stayed like that for hours until it got dark again. I knew it was coming. I told Chancey good night, and we went to sleep on the couch. When I woke up, I felt off. When I noticed that Chancey was next to me hugging, I didn't know what to do or what to say, so I just laid there thinking about what to do when I first get up or let her. I decided to wake her up before I moved, so she woke up about an hour later, and she must have not forgot I was still awake because I said good morning when she froze. She said that it seemed like heavenly as another nightmare came to comfort me, and I guess it worked. I don't remember waking up, so I guess she really did help. I thanked her and she seemed embarrassed. Not much happened that day, pretty simple, but no big problems. But that night, I had another terror, and that same old dream was horrified and curled up into a ball and started crying. Chancey came to the room again and sat down next to me and gave me a hug. She gave me a hug again, and we sat down and hugged me and told me that we were going to get through this together. She sat up with me again until I woke up again the next morning in her arms, but we were not around, so I was able to get up without waking her. I went to the bathroom and I looked at myself. I was in a mess and very thin and looked kind of sickly when then I see the mirror that Chasey was behind me. I turned around, she asked what I'm doing, and I said, just looking at how bad I look. She laughed and said that you don't look that bad. Thanks, I said, another normal day. But Chasey asked me about my mom again, and I told her the whole story, and she said, I'm so sorry, but I had to stop her and explain that I didn't care about my mom died and she was neglecting and verbally abusive, so there was no one should say they're sorry about her death. Chasey said okay, and we got off the subject. When night came again, I didn't want to fall asleep and I knew I would have another terror and wake up Chasey. So I told her goodnight, but I stayed up and just watched the fire as I put in a type of trance by the wispy flames. It must have been one of the most noticeable because I heard Chasey ask what I was doing. I snapped out of the trance and told her to go back to sleep, but she didn't like that response and sat down with me. And again, we just talked what I was doing. I told her that I was watching the fire, and then she asked me why I was asleep. I didn't know what to say, so I lied and said that I could not sleep, and she looked at me and asked, really, what up? I told her that I didn't want to keep waking her up with my terrors. She then looked at me and then told me that I needed to get sleep, and that she didn't care if she needed to stay up and help me sleep. I tried to tell her that I couldn't let her do that, but before I could finish, she said in the stern voice from the other day to go to sleep. I tried to protest, but she wasn't having any pit of it, and her paw was on my cheek and said in a sweeter voice, go to sleep, I'll be there for you. I don't know what that was, but that voice moved it and I quickly fell asleep. That night I had a dream that it was one of the many worst terrors of all time, but it was cut short by Chasey's voice, swooshing and telling me that everything was going to be okay, and that it was not real. Wait, not real? That's it. This is a dream, and it was all in my head. I constrained very, very hard, and just like my terror was over, I had beaten it. I woke up to Chasey holding my head and stroking my fur, and I thanked her quickly, but fell back to sleep. When I woke up again, I was still in her arms, and I knew that she was with me for most of the night, because she was there with a cup of water on the end of the table closest to her. It was not there yesterday. I just laid there motionless, thinking about how this is even possible. How did I beat my terror, and how does someone even care about me this much? When she woke up, I asked what happened last night, and she said that I was having another nightmare, and that was comforting me, and all of a sudden I stopped moving. And then I smiled and turned her head and whispered thank you, and fell back to sleep. Oh my God, I said that when then it happened again and again. What happened? Chasey asked. I beat it, I replied. You beat what? She asked. My nightmare, I replied. I was having it when I heard your voice over and saved it. It wasn't bad. And that it made me realize that I was in a dream, and that I could do anything I wanted, so I concentrated and pushed the nightmare out of my mind. It's gone, I said, and gave her a hug and started to cry. I could not have done it without you, I said it through my tears as it seemed to let out a sigh of relief. She hugged me back. That day I asked her questions about herself and what her favorite color is. Green? What do you like to do? She likes to climb trees and hunt at home with a homemade spear that her dad gave her. What's the best part about yourself? Her love for the outdoors asked. By the time we finished talking about the snowstorm, it was starting to set up, and we were thinking of going to my cabin to get some of my things for home, since I was going to be there for a while. Eventually we decided that we would go and just get the necessities. When we arrived at my cabin, it was full of snow and everything was ruined except the knife that my father gave to me. I was heartbroken of all my hard work had gone. I took the knife and we went back to Chasey's house. When the ride back was just silent and not a word was spoken. When we made it back to the house, it was a little after dark, and after the snow had picked up, it said the day Chasey found me. It was when we got to the door, it was kicked in. I looked at Chasey and she shook her head. I walked anyway, heard two people whispering while rummaging, saying sounds followed by what seemed to be male voices. I drew the knife and peeked around to find the corner and found two males. One that looked like a wolf and Another was a small feline. I looked back at the door and saw Chasey standing there, motioned her to get out of there. She shook her head no, and I mouthed her to get her out of there. She left in the direction to the car. Good, at least she is safe. I turned back to the burglars and tried to sneak up past the wolf to get to the feline. I wasn't sure if the wolf had a weapon, but I knew the feline had claws, so I was going to try to knock him. Unconscious, then I went go for the wolf, and I was about to attack the feline when he swung around and lashed in my face. I got caught in my right eye, and I stumbled when he pounced on me, slashing wildly. I was able to get the knife to defend myself, and of course, he went limp on top of me, and I pushed him off and grabbed him by my knife. And the commotion, I did not see where the wolf went. I was quietly moving around the house when I felt a chill run down my spine. I had my hand up and dropped the knife, and I looked around. The wolf was standing there with a handgun pointed at me. I asked if I wanted what he wanted, and it said in a deep voice, "I want your life." I heard the gunshot and flinched, but heard yelling, and it was Chasey. And she grabbed the pan and hit the wolf from behind, gave me enough time to knock him out while we wrestled for the gun. I heard 2 more shots and finally gave up. I grabbed the knife, was about to foot away, and dug into his chest. He then stopped almost instantly. I got off of him and took at least 2 steps towards Chasey, and she came running down to me, felt blood running down my leg. I looked down to see 2 holes, and then I looked at her and collapsed to the ground. All I could hear was her voice pleading me to stay awake and to not go into the light. I tried to stay awake, but I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again, I was in a white room and asked if anyone was there. A familiar voice answered, yes. I had not been. It had been years since I heard it was my dad, but it wasn't transparent. It was floating and suddenly came down to me. It told me that it is not my time yet to come back when I'm older. I laughed at so he did, and then he told me that I was being given another chance, and that I would be waiting for me when I was about to wake up. He hugged me as I cried. "But I wanted to be with you, Dad," I said. He looked at me and said that, "But there is someone else who needs me," who wanted to point to the vision type thing below us. It was Chasey, sobbing on my body. I looked at my dad again, and he said that I have found my place in the world now. "Be there," was what he said, with tears in my eyes. I shook my head, yes, and then he kissed me on the forehead, and I suddenly opened my eyes again, and I saw Chasey sobbing on me. I asked why she was crying. "He's dead," she replied with a quivering voice, but I suddenly looked up at her and looked with a smiling face. She wept with joy as getting things and stitched the wounds. As she finished with the snow, she did help me get to her car and drove to the nearest hospital. I was there for 3 months recovering from the scratch and gunshot wounds but every day she would see Chasey walk and stop by to visit. When I could sleep, I would sometimes see my dad as it would be the smile in the others, but I would have terrors from this time. I had Chasey by my side to help me fight the monster. In the end, we would always win and vanquish the demon for another night. When I was finally able to leave, it was spring, and Chasey brought me back to her house. I was still having trouble getting around, but she would tell me that she was looking for me when I made it onto the couch and sat down. I felt a shooting pain where I was shot. Chasey sat next to me and asked if I was okay. I replied yes, and she looked at me as if I thought I would live the way I used to. Tell her I didn't think so. When I replied she asked if I wanted to live with her for a while until I fully healed, and I agreed when she shot me a smile. I lived with her for a good few years, and our bond grew stronger and stronger, and eventually I would ask if she would marry me, and she said yes. We were married for a few months later, and we eventually had 2 babies. We named one that looked like me, Chaser, and the other one that looks like Chasey, Kitty. Later on in life, we were able to build a house on the very lake of this shack. Was with Chasey had to work while I stayed with the kids at home. I taught them my skills, and my dad taught me all those years ago, and they grew strong and brave and never letting anyone go down between them. Down where we lived, not far many years, when the kids moved out, it was just me and Chasey again, like if it was so many years ago. We lived a happy life together until Chasey and I went to sleep one night, and she didn't wake up. At her funeral, me, Chase, and Kitty gave her respects, and we went back to the house. Chase asked me if I wanted him to stay with me. I told him no, but I want to read you a story. He said, "Dad, I'm 27. I don't want you to read me a story." I told him that this isn't any kind of story he heard. It was a story of my life. And when I finished, he asked me why I haven't told him about it before. I replied, "Because this is the beginning of your story. Make it sure it's a happy one. Now be a good like your mother when she left. I knew my time had come to see my wife again." Hello, honey. Hello, Dad. Well, that was a very long story. I'm going to be completely honest. Now, and that, my little pretties, was Lifeline, a creepypasta. Well, I think I'm just gonna call it a fan fiction, but to me, it was a creepypasta. So you guys can maybe just call it whatever. You guys might just call it a fan story. Some of you guys might call it a creepypasta, but since this one was pretty long, I'm going to keep the review as short as I possibly can. So, with that said, this story was Lifeline, written by DarklyCan 458. My final thoughts on this story? This was actually a very decent and really well made creepypasta or fanfiction, whatever you guys prefer to call it. I actually found it to be rather good. It was sad at certain parts, I know. Like, throughout the story, this was actually a bit sad at certain parts, but I actually have to say that it was really amazing and really well made. Like, I could definitely see this happening in, like, a furry world with, furries. Now, here's something I'm gonna say right now is that I really actually found this story to be rather good. Like, the one thing I'm gonna definitely say right now is that I do appreciate was the good grammar, the storyline of how it all went out, the sentence structuring, the paragraph structuring, the concept. I could definitely say everything about it was just flat out good, even though there were a few, well, I guess I could definitely say there's a few things that I do have to go through about this story of, just to kind of help you guys. Now, just to let you know, DarklyCan, this is just me reviewing and just kind of wanting to do this so I can help you get better with your writing. Just thought I would get this out there just so you would understand what I'm talking about, in case if you ever were to see me review any of your stories. Just for future reference, but, I'm going to review this because, it's a review too, so, okay. I actually found the story to be rather good, even though the storyline and the concept seems pretty messed up, because, it's about, the harsh of, the weather and stuff. Like, it could be very harsh at times too, and that's just, something I'm willing to say right now, is that it's actually really, it's something I could definitely say that I liked about it. It was like, the concept itself, I could definitely say it's messed up at times, but it's still pretty good, and it's still really well made in the same way. Now, some of you guys might like it, some of you guys may not enjoy it, but, that's just your opinion. But I'm gonna definitely say it was sad, I will admit it's sad, but it's still a pretty good story. Like, I'm definitely gonna be completely honest that this story was absolutely amazing. However, if I have to say one or two things that I didn't like about it, one of them would have to be, the grammar was okay. It wasn't terrible, I'm just gonna say that. The grammar was okay. The sentence structuring needs to be a little bit of work. Like, as you could tell maybe throughout the story, I kind of stuttered. Well, I stuttered at certain parts because there were a couple of, punctuation errors throughout the story. Like, for example, I was trying to, read a certain line. There was even a few, places that there were supposed to be commas that should have been periods that should have been, there, or commas should have been there, or they were just a little all over the place. So, the story itself was, kind of difficult to read, in my opinion. I believe the story was a little bit difficult to read at certain parts. There were even a couple of misspelt words in there, so they could be fixed up, which shouldn't be a problem. There were a couple of misspelt words in the story, so I stuttered because of that as well, so just thought I would get it in there, that there was a few, spelling errors throughout the story. Like, what I suggest you do, DarklyCan, is if you're gonna write another story, is I would suggest you use Google Docs for your stories, because Google Docs can actually really help you with your, with the spelling errors you did, because, Google Docs can even help you find the grammatical errors, punctuation errors, and stuff like that. And it would actually be more helpful to do. Now, I'm not saying that the story was terrible. It was a good story. Sad at certain parts, but it was actually pretty good, to be honest. I'm definitely going to have to say that this story was actually really well made. However, I could definitely say what could have been done is just maybe, I guess maybe you could just kind of say maybe fix up the grammatical errors, and there were a few punctuation errors as well. So I guess when those get fixed up, I guess it's not going to be too much of an issue. But other than that, the story was absolutely amazing and well done. I definitely have to say, you did a really good job there, and I definitely have to say, hey, and commend you for that, DarklyCan. You did a pretty good job. This story was absolutely amazing, even though it was dark and messed up, and even sad at certain parts too. I really feel bad for the character in this story. I honestly feel bad for the character to go through all the crap that he's been through in his childhood. I really do feel bad for him. But other than the grammatical errors and punctuation errors need to be fixed up, the sentence structuring needs to be fixed up as well. And the paragraph structuring, it's just kind of a little bit too big, and there's like certain paragraphs that should have been split in a couple paragraphs. Just thought I would get it out there in case if you are going to send me another story. Just saying that for like a future reference, I would highly recommend you use Google Docs or Grammarly or something to help, fix up the punctuation errors, grammatical errors, and stuff like that. And even the spelling mistakes too. Just thought it would, get it out there just so then you have like a better understanding, so to speak, on it. Just so then you have like a better understanding. But other than that, the story was actually really good and really decent. I really have to say, you did a pretty good job on this story. Now, it does need to be fixed up, but other than that, the story was just absolutely amazing. And I definitely have to say, you did a really good job with this story, DarklyCan. You did pretty good. Now, I'm going to wrap up the review because the review is just as long as it is. And yet again, I'm trying to keep the review as short as I possibly can. But I'm going to say right here, right now, that this is simply my own personal opinion. And if you disagree with me, that's fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these creepypastas or fanfictions, whatever you guys decide to call this one. And this is simply my own personal thoughts. My final rating of this fanfiction or story would have to be I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 is because the story was absolutely amazing. Like, really dark, messed up, sad, but pretty good at the same time. It's a decent, well-made fanfiction, and that's definitely a positive that I could definitely say with this story. Another good reason why I actually really like it is that the story was actually really well made. Like, the fact that the story actually had some time and effort into it, even though there was a few punctuation errors throughout the story, but they could be fixed up and it wouldn't be too much of an issue. But other than that, the story was absolutely amazing, and I definitely have to say, this story was absolutely really well made. And I definitely have to say, you did a pretty good job with this story. So, with that being said, what did you all think about this story? Did you all enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what we have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Leave me know what your thoughts are in it down in the comment section down below. I'm the Queen of Lions. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. If you're brand new here to this channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because I make brand new videos every single day. And don't forget to ring the notification bell to when I upload, so then you guys will not miss an upload. So, with that being said, shout out to DarklyCan458. Thank you so much for the story yet again. You really did a good job. Like I said, keep up with the good work. Keep practicing writing, and you'll eventually get better as time goes on. And yeah, I guess I'm just going to say right now is that very good job with the story, and I highly recommend you do more of these. I really appreciate the story. But other than that, I'm going to say right now, really well done and made, and I will be, well, I guess you could say I'll be rolling the outro, people, because I'm out of here, and I will be seeing you all in the next video. Peace out, and I'll catch you all in the next video.